Also, a really important component of the site is the Peralta Plaza. This is about 20,000 square feet outdoors. It includes the Peralta Adobe, which is the oldest building in San Jose. It's a historic resource run by History San Jose. We'll be working with them to show this building off and to use it to all its advantage. So in this 20,000 outdoor square feet, we'll have lots of tables and chairs, benches, nooks, crannies, places to sit, places to eat, places to drink. We intend to have catering events. We intend to have festivals here. We intend to work with CineQuest, the Jazz Festival, every festival in town really, to help us activate this whole area. We want this to be the go-to place for activities in downtown San Jose. We're going to have the ability to close St. John Street between San Pedro and El Meden for farmers markets, festivals, and other events. That's another very important part of the project for us. Our goal is to have a Saturday farmers market on this street, which is closed, in addition to the current Friday farmers market, which happens right outside the doors of this restaurant on San Pedro between St. John and Santa Clara Street. If any of you have been to the Ferry Building in San Francisco, particularly on a Saturday morning, and I would venture to guess that most of you have probably done that, it's by far the busiest day of the week there, and that's because of the farmers market. So as opposed to the farmers market being competition with the public market, it essentially brings in hordes of people who, after they buy their fresh produce and whatever else they buy, walk into the public market, either window shop or purchase things. So the merchants there are extremely happy about having a farmers market outside their door.
It's kind of an interesting point on that farmers market figure. The retailers within the building do something like 75% of their actual sales during the Saturday the farmers market is held. So the bulk of their business and the ability to do and be successful relies on the farmers market. So we've played off of that and want to actually expand, as Steve said, and include as much of the farmers market element and expand it for a Saturday.
Any questions at this point?
So you said one building there's like phase one. Which building is that?
Actually, our phase one that I referred to, I should have been clearer. Thank you for asking about that. Our phase one is the 3 buildings that we're doing now and the Peralta Plaza. So this is our phase one. This building, and these both currently exist. We're finishing structural retrofit on this right now, and this building we are building, but it's a prefabricated building that's going to go up in June, literally in a couple of weeks. We'll be pouring foundations for that soon. It's going to be a real simple steel structure with corrugated metal exterior, as you can sort of see in these drawings, not perfectly. And the idea is that it kind of harkens back to the agricultural roots of our area. It'll have all roll-up doors around the perimeter. The idea is that this will be sort of an indoor-outdoor environment. You all know that we have the best weather in the world. Any of you who are in the real estate development business talk about that all the time. So we're going to basically have these roll-up doors in the open position 250 or 300 or more days per year, where this building will have this sort of indoor-outdoor feeling. These images don't accurately reflect it, but another important part of the project is that the sidewalk on the corner, which I'll show you when we go on the tour, is going to be expanded out about another 30 feet. It's going to be one of the biggest sort of public area sidewalks in the city, and we intend to activate that as an amazing outdoor cafe with tables, chairs, umbrellas, awnings, arbors, etc. And we don't have the final design on it yet, but it'll be very important. You'll be struck by how large it is when we get out there, I guarantee you.
What's going to happen is this sidewalk here will be widened to eliminate the parking that's currently there, and will continue all the way down to this corner. So what you see here will actually probably double in size. In these seating areas, the intent is to expand all these seating and people areas to allow as much of the outdoor space to be utilized as possible.
We're going to end up with approximately 35 tenants at the end of the day in these 25,000 square feet. So it's gross 25,000 square feet. Of that, we'll net somewhere in the 13 or 14,000 square foot level. It's typical of public markets that the net square footage that you get out of these spaces is only in the 50% or slightly more. So we're pretty typical in that regard. 25,000 square feet might seem like a really large project, but you can see that between walkways and bathrooms and hallways and things that we lose a lot to infrastructure. The new market building is going to have essentially 2 tenants. We're going to have an anchor restaurant, and we're going to have a coffee house. So this building is only going to have two, maybe 3 or 4 tenants at the most. The other 2 buildings will have lots of tenants, probably 15 tenants each, something in that range. What the anchor tenants for public markets are fishmonger, butcher, produce, bakery, and coffee. If you go to public markets really anywhere in the world, those would be your anchor tenants, and we're no exception. We're in the letter of intent phase right now with all of those different categories. So those tenants will be slightly larger than the typical ones. Our large tenants might be 400 square feet, just to put this thing into perspective. Again, other than our anchors, this might be 2,500 feet, maybe 1,000 feet here. Most of our tenants will be in the 200 to 500 square foot range. So getting back to what Martin was saying about what is the appeal of a project like this, we're very successful so far with letters of intent. We've got about 25 letters of intent. We're missing a couple of important ones, but mostly we're doing fabulously well. And the reason is, and I can speak to this as a restaurant owner. I own a couple of restaurants. It's what I've done for the last 35 years until I took on this job. Building a restaurant, and I'm sure many of you have built restaurants in various ways, it's extremely expensive. My 4,000 square foot restaurant cost about $1 million to build, which is typical. You're maybe $200 to $300 to $350 per foot to build out a restaurant. We've got spaces that are literally 200 square feet. So we've got an environment here where we supply all the mechanical systems, we supply the seating, we supply the restroom, we supply the walkways. And what that means is that the tenant only had, for as little as $50,000, might be able to build a brand new restaurant. Now they're not really restaurants, they're really food vendors. We would only call them a restaurant if they have their own seating, and most of these are not going to have their own seating. But the point is that people who have the world's greatest tamale or the world's greatest falafel or Aunt Mary's cherry pie, who, as Martin was saying, might have always wanted to open a store and have never done it, have very low barrier to entry here compared to what would be typical in the market of going into a space that's thousands of square feet, and one would have to build their own infrastructure. So the fact that we're building all that infrastructure is something that's been a huge advantage to us. I can tell you as the person who's out talking to prospective tenants, us getting tenants. So we've really had particular success with these smaller, creative, one-of-a-kind tenants. And our dream is that this is the place that when all of you come here, you'll tell your friends, oh my God, I had the greatest enchilada in my life, or the best dim sum, or spring roll, or whatever that food might be. We're intentionally trying to have tremendous variety. That is, we don't just want sort of the typical Chinese place, the typical sandwich place. We want places that have something really off the wall about them. Both food quality, characters behind the counter, interesting ways to approach personal service, really take care of their customers, etc., etc., etc. A number of our market uses we're planning on putting into the Sardi building. So this would likely end up being our fishmonger and butcher shop. We've got our produce over here along with our bakery, flour shop here. We've got one other anchor tenant over here that's anchor again, about 1,000 square foot, a full restaurant, which will probably have its own liquor license. So that gives you a rough idea of what kind of tenant mix we're talking about. Other questions at this point? Yes?
Steve, you have a pretty diverse tenant base. You bring together, say, a lifestyle center. You kind of know what you're getting already, and you can piece together tenants that have been in the market for 10 years already. But with these smaller, Aunt Mary's cherry pie and the dim sum dealer, how are you able to keep kind of creative? You want creativity, but you need control over the tenants, it seems, in order to make sure the whole project works. I'm just kind of curious what you're doing about that.
This is what we call the herding cats syndrome. Part of the answer to that is a 50-page lease, which in all seriousness, as somebody who's been a restaurant guy forever and had one-page leases, it's very interesting, but that really is an honest answer to your question, that we've collaborated with other public markets and looked at their documents that they use. This is far more complex than building a single freestanding building with a single tenant in it. You've got things like noise, smells, business operations, janitorial standards, etc. So the standards for this are very high and very complex. So that's how we're attempting to deal with it. Also, we'll have tenants in here who have extremely short leases. This is not one of those programs where the landlord wants to sign somebody to a 20-year lease at high rent and walk away and think, now I get all this cash flow out of it. It's exactly the opposite of that. We need successful tenants.